In the smoky haze of a Los Angeles studio, sometime in 1971, Bobby Womack's voice trembled through the microphone. Rich, aching, almost confessional. The world heard soul. He heard the sound of his own unraveling. Just years before, he was the golden protege of Sam Cooke. Now, he was the man condemned for marrying the widow, and later, for betraying the daughter. Every lyric, every guitar riff, carried traces of guilt and cocaine, of sleepless nights spent chasing ghosts that never forgave him. The spotlight loved him, but it also fed on him, devouring piece after piece until there was almost nothing left but sound and sorrow. Behind the velvet suits and platinum records lay a story of obsession, shame, and survival. A man who turned his pain into rhythm and his sins into melody. This is the untold truth of Bobby Womack. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Before the stage lights, before the fame, there was a small house on the east side of Cleveland. A house that shivered with gospel music and hunger. Bobby Womack was born into rhythm, the third of 5 boys in a family that believed salvation could be sung louder than despair. His father, Friendly Womack Sr., a steelworker by day and a preacher by night, demanded perfection. Every chord had to be right. Every note had to honor God. When young Bobby snapped a guitar string and replaced it with a shoelace, his father didn't see creativity. He saw defiance. The punishment was swift, and so was the lesson. Talent meant nothing without obedience. His mother, Naomi, was gentler, her organ playing a sanctuary from the storms of the household. But even she carried a quiet urgency, whispering to her sons that music was their only escape from the ghetto. "Sing your way out of here, baby," she told Bobby. He did. But the road out was paved with fear, not freedom. Poverty didn't just make him hungry, it made him restless. Nights without food turned into rehearsals by candlelight. Rat-infested walls became his audience. "We didn't bother the rats, and they didn't bother us," Bobby would later recall, half laughing, half broken. That world forged his voice. A sound equal parts wound and worship. But beneath the surface, it carved a deeper scar. His father's sermons were filled with warnings about sin, temptation, and pride, and Bobby internalized them all. To fail was not only shameful, it was unholy. The young boy began to equate love with approval, worth with applause. Every time his father nodded in silent satisfaction, it felt like grace. Every time his father frowned, it felt like damnation. That emotional equation would define his life and destroy much of it. By his teens, the Womack brothers were local stars, performing in church halls and small clubs. But gospel alone couldn't feed the family. So when Sam Cooke, already a legend, heard their harmonies and invited them to join his label, it was like divine intervention. Friendly Sr. objected. Secular music was the devil's language. Bobby hesitated, torn between loyalty and liberation. He loved his father, but he also longed to breathe. When he finally left home to tour with Cooke, he wasn't just chasing fame. He was running from the pulpit. Sam Cooke became the father Bobby wished he'd had. Patient, charismatic, encouraging. Under Cooke's guidance, Bobby learned not just how to sing, but how to feel a song. He played guitar like a preacher giving confession. Soft one moment, screaming the next. Yet even as success began to bloom, that inner voice, the one shaped by guilt and fear, never stopped whispering. Don't forget where you came from. Don't let them make you sin. And this. In the late 52nds, he slept on tour buses, writing songs about love and loneliness, watching the world from the back seat. He saw the contradictions of the industry up close. How gospel boys became R&B sinners, how applause replaced prayer. He started wearing the same suits as Cooke, carrying himself like a man twice his age, trying to fit into a world that rewarded image more than innocence. But something inside him remained the scared boy from Cleveland, always trying to earn forgiveness. His relationship with Sam Cooke deepened, both professional and personal. Cooke trusted Bobby, and Bobby worshipped him, almost blindly. Sam was everything his father wasn't: forgiving, indulgent, and free. When Cooke called him son, Bobby believed it. But buried in that affection was a shadow. The idea that love could be conditional, that protection could turn into possession. When Sam was killed in 1964, that fragile bond shattered. And when Bobby chose to marry Sam's widow, Barbara, just 77 days later, the wound from his childhood finally split open. To the public, it was betrayal. To Bobby, it was rescue. A desperate attempt to stay connected to the man who'd saved him. He thought he was preserving love. Instead, he was repeating his trauma. Barbara became another authority figure to please, another impossible standard to meet. The same pattern his father had planted decades earlier was playing out again, only this time in the glare of Hollywood scandal. The boy who once replaced a guitar string with a shoelace was now replacing heartbreak with addiction, shame with song. And deep down, he knew that the music, his gift, his curse, had started as a cry for approval. It would soon become a scream for survival. Fame never arrives quietly. For Bobby Womack, it came roaring, in flashing lights, scandal, and songs that cut deeper than he intended. After marrying Barbara Cooke, the widow of his mentor Sam Cooke, his career was supposed to end. Radio DJs blacklisted him. Concert promoters refused his name on posters. To the world, he was the traitor who desecrated the memory of a saint. But Bobby, defiant and wounded, decided to fight with the only weapon he had left: his music. He released Fly Me to the Moon in 1968, and suddenly his voice, smoky, confessional, raw, began to reclaim the respect he'd lost. Each song felt like an act of penance, each guitar riff like a confession booth. He sang of heartbreak and guilt, not as abstractions, but as lived experiences. What is this? Critics wondered. It wasn't soul in the clean sense. It was too real, too scarred. His pain had become his art. Yet, success carried its own poison. The same stage that gave him redemption also demanded constant sacrifice. He was everywhere. Writing for Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett, Janis Joplin, and performing with relentless energy. His lyrics became darker, more personal. I can understand why people hurt each other, baby. Behind the velvet suits and wide smiles, his nights blurred into a ritual of cocaine and whiskey. He worked himself to exhaustion, not out of ambition, but out of fear. If the spotlight ever dimmed, so would his worth. During the early 1970 seconds, Bobby seemed unstoppable. He joined the Rolling Stones on tour, played guitar for Sly and the Family Stone, and recorded hits like That's the Way I Feel About, Cha and Woman's Gotta Have It. But even as his sound defined an era, his soul was unraveling. fame had turned him into an emotional fugitive, running from his past, his critics, and himself. Barbara watched the transformation with cold eyes. She saw a man chasing ghosts, a husband drowning in noise. The more applause he earned, the further he drifted from her. What began as a scandalous marriage of love and survival turned into a slow-motion collapse. By 1970, the discovery of his affair with Barbara's daughter, Linda Cooke, Sam's teenage child, detonated everything. Barbara's gunshot grazed his head, and though he survived physically, something inside him shattered permanently. After the shooting, Bobby moved like a man walking through fog. His performances grew more erratic, his behavior unpredictable. He surrounded himself with people who only knew him as a legend, not as a broken man. In interviews, he masked despair with bravado, claiming he was born to sing through pain. In truth, he was using the studio as a syringe, injecting himself with rhythm to forget. The 1,970 seconds became his paradoxical decade. Commercially successful, personally ruinous. He collaborated with artists who saw him as a genius, but behind closed doors he was falling apart. He called cocaine his angel, though it stole his voice, his sleep, and his sanity. "I'd stay up for 8 days," he once admitted, "just writing, recording, blowing more coke than I could count." The more he created, the more he decayed. But art has a cruel sense of irony. It rewards the most broken souls. When Bobby rode across 110th Street for the 1972 film, it became an anthem of survival in Harlem, a hymn for the hopeless. Listeners thought it was political. It was personal. He was singing about his own moral slum. A man trapped between salvation and sin, between the church of his father and the chaos of Hollywood. He became the sound of contradiction. On stage, he looked untouchable. Diamond cufflinks, satin jackets, laughter echoing through smoke. Off stage, he was haunted by isolation. The friends who adored him by night disappeared by morning. Money flowed like a drug he couldn't stop taking. When he tried to find comfort in new lovers, they only reflected his restlessness back at him. In 1974, during a recording session, exhaustion finally caught up. He collapsed from a head injury, temporarily losing his sight. For weeks, he lay in darkness, the man who once saw everything. Fame, sin, betrayal, now unable to see it all. It was as if fate had forced him to look inward for the first time. "I thought I was blind forever," he later confessed. "And maybe I deserved it. That is very one. The something that is where than processed." That period changed his sound. His next albums were heavier, slower, soaked in melancholy. He turned his voice into a lament, his guitar into a mirror. While the rest of the industry chased disco and trends, Bobby stood still, mourning something no one else could name. He was no longer writing to impress. He was writing to survive. Yet even his redemption had a dark price. Each comeback required a deeper descent into chaos. He could never escape the gravity of his own guilt. The cocaine dulled his shame, the music justified it, and the fame demanded he keep feeding it. By the late 70s, he was both a success story and a cautionary tale. The preacher's son who'd turned confession into performance. To outsiders, Bobby Womack was a soul icon. A man who had lived every lyric he sang. But inside, he was still that frightened boy from Cleveland, trying to earn his father's nod. The applause never healed him. It only made the silence between shows unbearable. In one haunting interview, he said softly, "People think I sing about love, but I sing about survival. Love just makes it sound prettier. We're forry, fours and porting. The days destroyed, friends day. By the end of the decade, Bobby's name glittered again. But the man behind it was fading. He had become the price of his own perfection, adored by millions but lost to himself. His rise had been magnificent, but every triumph carried a whisper of doom. And in that whisper, you could already hear the next fall coming. Love was supposed to be Bobby Womack's redemption. Instead, it became the stage where all his ghosts performed. When the lights dimmed and the crowd faded, he was left alone with the women who had once adored him and the echoes of his own betrayal. The man who wrote some of the greatest love songs in soul history had never learned how to love without fear. Every embrace carried suspicion. Every promise felt like a lie waiting to unfold. Barbara Cooke had once been his sanctuary, a link to the only man who had ever believed in him. Sam Cooke. But their marriage, born in scandal, decayed under the weight of shame and resentment. The industry never forgave them, and neither did they forgive each other. Bobby's devotion turned defensive. Barbara's affection hardened into surveillance. Their home became a battleground of guilt, jealousy, and unspoken debts. When Barbara looked at him, she didn't see a husband. She saw the man who reminded her of everything she had lost. In interviews years later, Bobby would admit that he was too young, too confused to understand what he had walked into. "I thought I was saving her," he said, "but I was really saving myself." The truth was far uglier. He needed Barbara to keep Sam's ghost alive. She needed Bobby to keep her relevance breathing. It wasn't marriage. It was mutual haunting. The breaking point came in 1970, when Barbara discovered the unforgivable, Bobby's secret affair with her daughter, Linda Cooke, just 17. The revelation tore through the house like an explosion. Linda had been the last remnant of Sam, the only untouchable memory. To Barbara, this was not merely infidelity, it was desecration. The confrontation was cinematic and horrifying. Barbara found them together and snapped. "You dirty bastard," she screamed, reaching for a gun. The bullet grazed Bobby's head, a crimson line across his temple, a literal mark of his sins. He survived, but something fundamental within him didn't. That moment, that scream, that wound, became the scar his career could never hide. After the shooting, Barbara threw him out. Linda fled with him for a short time, but the relationship collapsed under guilt and scrutiny. The public devoured the story, twisting it into tabloid mythology. To many, Bobby Womack became the embodiment of moral collapse. The preacher's son who broke every commandment. His records vanished from radio for a time, and even his peers in the industry distanced themselves. But isolation only deepened his addiction. The more the world shamed him, the louder his music grew. His heartbreak bled into his songs. In "If You Think You're Lonely Now," he turned abandonment into melody. In "I Wish He Didn't Trust Me So Much," he disguised guilt as poetry. Listeners thought he was telling universal truths about love. In reality, he was reliving his confessions on vinyl. Each track was a new chapter in his self-punishment, a way to keep the pain alive, because silence felt like death. But the tragedy of Bobby Womack wasn't just infidelity or addiction. It was his pattern of repeating the same emotional cycle over and over. He sought love in women who reminded him of the same control he had once felt from his father. The authority, the judgment, the demand to perform. Love became a performance, and every failed relationship was another encore in a play he didn't know how to stop acting in. He remarried later, but the wounds of Barbara and Linda shadowed him. In the music world, whispers followed him everywhere. Some said he was cursed. Others called him fearless. A man unafraid to put his sins on display. But those who knew him privately saw a man oscillating between arrogance and regret. He could charm a room in seconds, then retreat into silence for days. His life with women was always a pendulum, swinging between devotion and destruction. By the mid-1970 seconds, the cocaine had taken over. It wasn't just a habit, it was the pulse behind every night. He surrounded himself with fleeting company. Singers, groupies, hangers-on. Anyone who could distract him from the gnawing sense of loss. "I wasn't looking for love anymore," he said once. "I was looking for noise." That noise filled the void, left by Barbara, by Linda, by Sam Cooke, by his father, by every person who had ever left. There were nights when he'd sing until dawn, eyes glazed, body trembling. The band would pack up, but Bobby would stay, playing one last chord long after everyone was gone. The sound was messy, haunted, beautiful, like a confession whispered to an empty church. The same man who wrote about love now lived as proof of what it could destroy. In the years that followed, he tried to make peace. He reached out to Barbara, seeking forgiveness. She refused. Linda went on to marry Cecil Womack, Bobby's brother, sealing one of the strangest, most painful family circles in music history. To outsiders, it was soap opera. To Bobby, it was karma. "Maybe I earned that," he said later. "Maybe that's what I get for wanting too much." And it is. Love, for him, had always been intertwined with power. And by the end of the 1970 seconds, the power was all he had left. His voice could still move audiences, but inside he was exhausted. Every lover had become a mirror, every song a confession, every success another wound reopened. The man who once sang with faith now sang like someone searching for mercy. He had reached the peak of his emotional destruction. Loved by millions, but unable to love himself. The boy from Cleveland who'd once prayed through music had become the man who sinned through it. And the world, as always, kept applauding. The curtain hadn't fallen yet, but you could already sense the quiet before the collapse. By the dawn of the 1980 seconds, Bobby Womack's name had become both a legend and a warning. His voice, once liquid gold, now rasped like sandpaper dragged across memory. His eyes carried the exhaustion of a man who had outlived too many of his own versions. Yet even as the hits faded, the chaos didn't. The world saw a survivor. He knew he was just a man negotiating with his own ghosts. The drugs had long stopped being a party. They had become routine, ritual, almost sacred in their destruction. He once confessed to staying awake for 7 or 8 days straight, living on cocaine, pills, and whatever kept the demons quiet. "I'd blow as much coke as I could blow," he admitted, "then drink and write and pray I wouldn't wake up." It wasn't exaggeration. It was autobiography. Friends said he'd vanish for days, emerge skeletal, trembling, carrying notebooks full of lyrics scribbled in uneven lines. Fragments of guilt disguised as poetry. Then came the collapse of his body. Years of cocaine abuse, sleeplessness, and malnutrition stripped away 40 pounds from his frame. During one terrifying episode, he slipped into a coma that lasted 17 days. Doctors told his family that his organs were failing, that he might never wake up. When his eyes finally opened, he whispered that he had seen the light. But it wasn't heaven, it was pain. He believed for a brief moment that he was being punished. That every betrayal, every sin, every overdose had finally come to collect its debt. When he returned to music, his voice had changed. It was thinner, haunted, yet strangely more powerful. He recorded The Poet in 1981, a record that pulsed with survival. Tracks like If You Think You're Lonely Now weren't love songs anymore. They were obituaries sung in first person. The world heard revival. Bobby knew it was confession. But addiction doesn't surrender easily. Fame gave him money again, and money gave him access to more drugs. The same cycle replayed. Hotel rooms, strangers, binges, disappearances. He tried to clean up, failed, tried again, failed harder. Each relapse took something away. First his health, then his memory, then his peace. By the early 1992, Bobby had become a ghost of the soul era he helped define. His friends were dying. Sam, Cooke, Janis, Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, all gone long before. "I made it past the curse," he said once, "but maybe I just got a longer sentence." When his son, Truth, accidentally shot himself in 1988 at the age of 4, Bobby's fragile world collapsed. He spiraled into another deep addiction, mixing grief with drugs, faith with fury. He would sit alone in studios at night, whispering into microphones, recording songs no one ever heard. The pain seeped into his music again. He performed less, canceled tours, and battled chronic illness. Diabetes, pneumonia, colon cancer, heart failure. He often joked that his body was a church full of broken organs. Yet, somehow, he kept going. The man who once lived off sin now lived off sheer survival instinct. He called it God's sense of humor. With resigned formation, there was a strange dignity in his decline. Unlike many of his peers, he didn't hide the wreckage. In interviews, he spoke about addiction without shame. "You don't quit drugs," he said. "You just outlive them." His honesty shocked people. It wasn't the kind of confession that sold records, but it made him human again. He began talking about the industry's cruelty, how it chews up black artists and sells their pain as product. "They want you to sound broken," he said. "They just don't want to see you when you are." With resigned formation. In 2012, at age 68, doctors diagnosed him with colon cancer. Surgery followed, and for a while, it seemed like he had beaten it. But soon came another blow. An early diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. For a man whose life depended on memory, it was a cruel irony. He began forgetting lyrics, names, even moments from his own songs. "It's like your soul stays awake," he told The Guardian, "but your mind keeps turning the lights off." In once of the stereo self, with a regret, still, he refused to disappear quietly. That same year, Damon Albarn and Richard Russell brought him back to the studio for The Bravest Man in the Universe, an album that felt like a requiem wrapped in digital skin. The record pulsed with modern production, but Bobby's voice was ancient. Cracked, weary, magnificent. Critics hailed it as his resurrection. He called it a second funeral where I got to attend. In Once of the Stereo Self, with a regard, songs like Please Forgive My Heart felt almost unbearable. His voice trembling between confession and surrender. It wasn't performance anymore. It was testimony. You could hear the years of cocaine, heartbreak, and insomnia bleeding through every line. When he sang, "The bravest man in the universe is the one who has forgiven first," it didn't sound like metaphor. It sounded like surrender. By 2014, his health was failing rapidly. His weight fluctuated wildly, his vision blurred, his memory fractured. He once arrived at a concert and asked the crew, "Whose show is this?" Yet when the music began, instinct took over. For a few minutes, the years dissolved. The audience didn't see a dying man. They saw history breathing. He passed away quietly on the 27th of June, 2014, in Los Angeles. No overdose, no scandal, no spectacle, just silence. He was 70. The news headlines tried to summarize him. Soul legend dies after battle with addiction and illness. But how do you summarize a man who spent his whole life fighting to exist beyond the headlines? In death, Bobby Womack became what he'd always been chasing: peace. His story wasn't a cautionary tale, nor a tragedy in the traditional sense. It was the story of a man who kept singing through the wreckage, who turned pain into melody long after the audience stopped clapping. He once said, "I don't believe in happy endings. I believe in real ones." And perhaps that was his redemption. Not the applause, not the records, but the honesty to live and die without pretending. His legacy remains a paradox, both luminous and bruised. Artists from Rod Stewart to Damon Albarn to Lana Del Rey cite him as a spiritual ancestor. His music still plays in films, sampled in hip-hop, echoing in the voices of those who learned from his scars. He taught the world that soul isn't a genre, it's survival. When the lights fade and his voice hums one last time through the speakers, it sounds less like a farewell and more like a warning. That every spotlight carries a shadow, and every song has a cost. Because Bobby Womack didn't just live the blues. He was the blues. In flesh, in voice, in heartbreak. And that, perhaps, is the truest legacy of all.